Hello everyone, welcome to my second lecture of the evening, Play Like the Pros, GM Josh Friedel. So last week I went over a game of Keras. This time I decided to go over a slightly more recent game, actually played this past week, between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and Gawain Jones, a very strong English Grandmaster. This was played in the Tata Steel tournament, which is actually still going on. I'd recommend, if you haven't tuned into it, to keep going, to tune into it now. It's a very interesting tournament. Currently, I believe Magnus is tied with the lead for the lead with Giri and Mamadjarov. So it should be an interesting end to the tournament. But this game almost sent Magnus's tournament completely off the rails. And the reason why is very simple. So part of playing like a pro is obviously doing lots of good things. But in this case, he basically just blundered a piece. The world champion blundered a piece. That may come as a surprise to some of you, but the fact is that everyone does this once in a while. Is the world champion going to blunder fewer pieces than, say, an amateur player at the club? Almost for sure. It's very rare the world champion will make like a huge blunder like this, or for any grandmaster, but it does happen. But what separates GMs and especially the world champion from, lower rated players is not just that they blunder less, but how they react to blunders. I told you he blundered a piece in this game, which he did. He also won it against an elite player. This is not a fish. So the fact that he could do this, okay, obviously his opponent has to help him out a little bit, but it means that the way he responded to the blunder was very instructive. And that's kind of more what I want to go over. I don't want to teach you guys how to blunder like the pros. That's another class. But I want to teach you how to recover from blunders that you make, because you will blunder. Hate to spoil any hopes you had of never blundering, but all of us do it. So let's continue to the game. E4, C5, knight F3, D6. So Jones really likes the dragon. Carlsen said he barely prepared for the dragon. I find that a little hard to believe, considering this is Jones's specialty, and usually I find that especially if people are facing like a world champion or some elite player they don't normally play, they actually save their best openings for them. They save the ones they're most comfortable with. So is the dragon a risky opening? Of course it is, but he wants to test it against the world champion. Why not? So bishop e3, bishop g7, f3. This is all book moves. Knight c6, queen d2. Castles, castles. Bishop c4, of course, is the other line. There are lines also where black tries to play with early g4, which are a little different. And black plays d5, which is the main move here. So there are lots of moves. E takes d5 is the main line. Black's been kind of doing okay there, actually, as of late. King b1 is a move, but Carlsen chooses another line. Again, not one of the more common lines, but definitely possible. Queen e1. So black plays e5, which is the main choice here. Knight takes c6, b takes c6. Takes here, knight takes. Bishop c4, which is kind of what people are doing these days. I don't want to focus too much on the opening, which is why I'm going a little quickly. But basically, black has a lot of piece play. Black's bishop is hoping to get open. Black's trying to attack. But black also has a slight problem with this piece in the center. And the question is whether that piece becomes attackable or not. Black plays bishop e6. King b1, which again is kind of what people are doing. Just slight improvement to the king, getting off this diagonal for later. And here, Jones had played this position 3 previous times. And you'll find this is often the case when there's a very, very strong player. Jones is near, I'd say 2650 or so, who plays an opening that's slightly offbeat. You'll find that at some point you get to half the games left are their games. And that's the way Jones is with the dragon. He plays the dragon a lot. He knows it extremely well. So some advice I would have is if you're going to take on someone like this. So obviously not everyone plays 2650s every day. But if you play a very strong player who has a pet line, there's nothing wrong with going into it. But you have to realize they're going to be prepared to the teeth. If you play a risky line like the dragon and that's all you play, you have to know it really, really well. Believe it or not, I've actually played Jones This was in, I believe it was the World Youth Under 18. Huh? Not the one I played Mamajarov. No, that was a painful game. Thanks for reminding me. No, it was the one. It was the one the year before, I believe, and or no, it was the year after actually. And I played Jones, and it was a dragon, and I thought I had a good position, and he ended up just crushing me. So I know from experience. Obviously, a long, long time ago, we were both quite a bit weaker, but he knows his dragon. And one of the things, again, you're going to take someone on in this. You better be well prepared. And also realize they may not just play what they play. One of the things you'll notice is when, say, like an amateur player plays one opening and only that opening, they tend to be very predictable. They'll play the exact same move order every time. So if you prepare a specific line for them, they're going to have a problem. And sometimes you can actually beat them. What very, very strong players will do is they'll vary it up a little bit. He may play the dragon and only the dragon, but he'll play a slightly different line. He'll mix it up. So in this game, for sure, he had his eyes kind of, he was probably suspicious. Carlsen doesn't normally play into this. This isn't quite his thing. So Jones, in almost every previous game, played rook b8. I think in 3 previous games he played here, he played rook b8. In this game, he threw rook e8 at him. And this was an excellent decision because Carlsen already was not prepared for this move. At the very least, he confused his preparation. So knight e4, which of course is very natural. But the main idea of rook e8, by the way, is that it's not as active as rook b8, but there are lines when white actually can take this hanging pawn, which is kind of funny. In any case, knight e4 was played. Black played f5 here. Queen c7, I think, is actually what most people play. So it's possible that Jones played rook e8 just trying to avoid Magnus's prep, and that he himself wasn't fully prepared in this line. I'd say it's unlikely. Someone like Jones is going to know this line really well. But in any case, he played f5, which is not some terrible move. Magnus played knight g5, bishop c8, which is kind of the common pattern here. And in this position, though, Magnus really revealed that he was kind of bluffing a little in the opening. Because in this position, I don't know how much time he spent. I wasn't following this live, but he played an atrocious move. I'm not going to have you guys find the atrocious move, but I will have you find a good move here.
You move for black or white?
It's white's turn, so we'll start with that.
D5.
You can, but you're fixing my pawns and sacking the exchange. So I would say if you do this, you better have a very specific idea. Look at these pawns. I know we already did the pawn lecture, but look at those guys. Oh my goodness. They're scary. I would be terrified here. Not that me being terrified should ever make you play a move or make you not play a move, but I would be. Yeah, I wouldn't do this. Remember, you need a follow-up, right? Like, it's nice to sack a piece, but, you know, got to have an idea behind it. But there's a very important question which you should always ask yourself, and which I hate to make assumptions. I don't think Carlsen actually asked himself this question, which is, does my opponent have a threat? And I'm asking you guys, does my opponent have a threat? Does black have a threat? Black has a very definite threat here, I believe. Yes, f4. So the question is, how do you address this threat? What should white play? Yeah, h4 is a nice move, and just the normal idea in these types of positions. You not only guard your knight, but you're starting your attack, right? The only thing is, after h6, you don't really want to have to move your knight back. But luckily, you have a very convenient square for this knight. Yeah. And you can say, haha, pin. And again, life goes on. Black can play bishop back to e6. Life continues. Bishop b3, I think, is a kind of a clever move. Because remember, this guy is still pinned by the rook, right? And again, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but white's doing quite okay. Let's put it that way. But in the game, Magnus played g4.
I wonder what he said in his
Jones played f4. Well, I can tell you, he looked happier than he would have been if he lost. But he was very angry with himself. He basically just said it was just an outright blunder. He just missed f4. So now we come to the next decision. You're Magnus. Let's celebrate, we're world champion. Yes. So we're white, but we just blundered a piece, so we're not as happy. We're probably mad at himself. He's probably wishing he could throw something at the wall. But how do you react? What do? Do you just resign? Do you find a way to play on? Do you throw the dice and just play a random move? How do you react here? It's possible. Sometimes that's the best way. Like if you play normal moves, you end up, with not much. So attack is obviously what you have to go for. But at the same time, I would say that a lot of people approximate a lot. Like say they blunder and then they're like, all right, well, it should be sort of this. It should be sort of this. After you blunder, that's the most important time to be accurate. If you play one inaccurate move and allow your opponent to consolidate easily, that's when you're just going to lose without a fight. And guess what? If black plays well here, you might lose without a fight anyway. But you want to at least give black a chance to not win. Give black a chance to not do it easily. So knight e4 is a perfectly rational move. The problem is that after I take your bishop, say you take me back, and I have bishop e6. Easy move, keeping my king secure, maybe king h8 next, and even bishop back. There's no way you're ever going to touch me there. Not when I have an extra piece. You might get attacked eventually, but not me. So what did Magnus do instead? Which is, I wouldn't say it's much better, but it's trickier. It's slightly more accurate, that little bit more accurate. We talk about how he plays very accurate moves in equal positions, and that's what puts pressure on people. Well, what put pressure on black here was he played accurate moves even though he's lost. Even though he's down a piece, he's playing accurate moves. So what's the most accurate move? Problem is if you give up the knight and you don't even, the problem here is, this is a pretty big knight. So let's say here, takes here. This is tempting because bishop h4, queen h6, but somehow you can't really do much there. It's kind of annoying. You can play rook takes knight, but the problem is now we just simplify. And simplification is not your friend, right? That's going to make things a little bit harder for you. So you're still just down a piece for a pawn, but you're never going to attack here, right? Not with these bishops. So this is not the right approach. Bishop h4 is very tempting, I have to admit, but he wanted black to have to take so that black's pawns would be bad, so that he'd have something to play against. You want your opponent to at least have weaknesses if you're going to be down material. If they have no weaknesses, it's going to be harder. h4, excellent move. So black captures, now plays h6, but this is the point. Now, if black wants to put the bishop on e6, black has to create a weakness. Black has to push pawns on the king side, which he does not want to do. So again, it seems so minor. But little things like this make a difference. Now, continue to be accurate. Continue to make black find the best moves. What does white play here? Knight e4 would be the normal move. But then as we discussed, bishop goes back, bishop goes back. What do you have? You're just down a piece. And again, sometimes you have to accept that. But he wanted to make black's life a little bit trickier. So again, accuracy is key.
Queen e4?
Queen e4 is possible. The only problem is if I defend my knight, your knight does not have a retreat then. But he does play a similar move. Actually, after queen e4, I might be able to just take your knight, come to think of it. Maybe. Yeah, if queen e4, I think I can take this. Although, I have to say, I approve of the fact you're trying to make it complicated, right? Problem is, you probably take with a rook, right? But the problem is, I think you simplify a little much. Then I take... I could still play bishop e6 there. I don't have to take you. And yeah, you can take... Yeah, this is not good, right? Just not... You're running out of pieces is the problem. It's nice to attack, but you need pieces to attack. So he played a very similar move, though. Attacking this pawn. And what's the problem now? Why would he play this move? Why is it so important to put the queen there?
Because it's not letting black escape from it's taking away the f8 square.
Well, I don't think the king really wants to go to f8. It would rather go somewhere else. But it's preventing black from just consolidating. Remember after knight e4, black plays bishop e6 and consolidates? That's kind of the whole key. When you're up material, and he's kind of asking himself, what does Jones want to do? When you're up material, you want to consolidate. You want to make your position solid, right? Because in the long term, if you make your position solid, you're just going to win. You're up material, right? Once you're solid, you slowly build, you slowly improve. But if your position is a little bit less stable, if your king's a little weak, if you have some slight problem, that can make your life just that little bit harder. And again, he's not claiming to be winning here, but he's putting that little bit extra pressure on black. So what does black have to play now? Most likely.
Bishop d3, d6.
D7?
d6. Oh,
This is D6. You mean E6?
yeah.
The problem, though, is that now this bishop hangs. So, for example, maybe queen takes pawn is playable, but even if I take, you might have to deal with a move like this. And I'm not saying that this is all that great. Probably you'll still be up a piece, but it's a little annoying, right? You're losing a pawn, you're getting pinned up. I don't know. But I also might just take this one, too. So now I'm still threatening knight takes e6 on you. If you take this knight, then you're opening up your king as well. So for example, maybe now bishop takes, or even rook takes is maybe possible. But you see how your life's getting complicated? That's what Magnus wants. He wants black to have to make tough choices. To have to be like, oh, either I have to allow attack, or in this case, he plays bishop b7. So is this some awful move? Of course not. But why did he want to make sure the bishop went there? Right. This bishop is worse here than it is here, right? It leaves black's king more open. It's not, there's a pawn in the way. So it seems like such a minor thing. Like, why would you bother with this? Well, when you're down a piece, you need every little edge, every little chance you get. If you were to allow the black bishop here, it wouldn't be some blunder. Computer would be like, it's a little worse. But from a human standpoint, it matters a lot. If you allow your opponent to just get a nice solid position, they're probably just going to beat you up a piece, right? So he plays knight back. And black plays rook e6. I'm not a huge fan of rook e6. He's trying to kind of create a sort of solid thing for his pieces. He's trying to control the d square. I thought this move was more clear. Forcing the queen away immediately. Queen comes out. Maybe king g7 if you need to. I don't know. But okay, rook e6 is not some awful move. White plays h5. And this is where he gets a little help. Remember, you're down a piece. If you don't get help, you're probably not gonna hold the game. What should black do here? Bishop f8 is possible, but I move my queen. I don't think it changes too much here. I'm not threatening to go into d6, so.
Queen f8?
Queen e8.
I do not like any of these moves. I can tell you, when I was playing through this game, I'm not totally sure, but probably I would play this move very quickly.
G5?
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep the position closed. If you have an open king, that's where you can get into trouble. You don't have a bishop here. If you had a bishop here, it might be different. You could probably allow more. But your bishop's out here. Keep the king side closed. Do not try to be tricky. Do not try to be super tactical. Keep things simple. Yes, you go up the f5 square. Is that f5 square going to kill you? Probably not. You're up a piece, right? Next, you play queen b6. Maybe it's not the most accurate move. In this case, I think it might be. But it doesn't matter. You keep things simple. You keep the king side closed. And this is, I think, the thinking that Jones didn't do. I think that he really wanted to be really accurate. He wanted to punish in the most severe way, which sometimes is the right approach. But there are times when you should play simple. Just be like, all right, I'm up material. I want to keep the game not complicated, right? You want to keep things simple when you're up. G5, keep the position closed. So I think that would have been a much better decision. He played queen b6, which doesn't look like an awful move, but it actually allows Carlsen to get a counterplay immediately. And then already he may not be losing. Already not so easy. So trading queens, Jones would be cheering wildly if you take on b6. 8 takes, you fix your pawns, you cover the c5 square. He doesn't care if he has to give up a pawn. He would be like, you know, jumping up in his seat if he saw that one. Queen a3 is possible, but even at the very least, maybe I can even play g5 there. Bishop f8 is also a move, keep in mind. What move did black not play?
G5. Said G5.
I like your logic. And all of a sudden, I don't know, things are messy, right? Forget about the fact that objectively it's now not so easy. Let's say black were still completely winning, the same as if you had played g5. Would you rather have this position or the position after g5? If you were black, which one would you rather have against the world champion? Not that it should matter, I'm just adding pressure to your choice. You'd rather have g5, right? h6, g5, you'd rather have the position closed. Regardless of whether this is objectively annoying or whether you can get by it, this is annoying to play. You don't want to have to do this. And when you're up a piece, sometimes you have to allow complications. Sometimes you can't win the simple way. And then, okay, you do what you have to do. But if you're up a piece for not much counterplay, for very little, keep it that way. Keep the position closed. g5 turns out to be just an excellent move. But after this, it's all of a sudden extremely messy. So there are lots of moves. In the game, he took on g5. Queen takes c5.
I thought it is
Queen takes c5 is losing, yes. How? Rook e7? Indeed. So trading queens would be nice. Bishop f8 is kind of my favorite line because now white has to find a very nice move to keep pressure. But it does. And by pressure, I mean counterplay. I don't mean like you're better. So here, almost for sure, I would take very quickly. Because now, the queen's attacked. If takes, you just take back with the pawn, for example. The knight's attacked. You're in an endgame. Your bishops are monsters. It's probably just good for you, right? Whereas, if you try to grab this queen like a greedy person, and I hate greedy people in general, but especially greedy chess players, bishop takes rook, and now this pawn, rook coming to d7. Just a mess, right? Tons of counterplay. So almost for sure I would never take that queen. Maybe I would have to calculate it a little bit, just to make sure I have counterplay, just to make sure the other line's not winning, but I'm quite sure I would probably take that bishop. In any case, this is the move. Quite a move, huh? But the idea is that now if black wants to trade queens, black has to bring your rook into the game. And with the rooks on g1 and these pawns here, it's going to be a little uncomfortable for this king, isn't it? Going to get lots of counterplay. So for example, if takes, takes. So here, g takes h5 is what I wanted at first, but after check, rook h5, I don't know. Seems like there's lots of counterplay, right? Not to mention, if you lose too many pawns, it's going to be hard to win just with limited pawns, right? Even if you are up a piece. So it turns out black actually has a really cool idea here. But it is far from obvious. Knight f4? I'm not sure how that helps you. Then you have a hanging rook all the time, which I don't have to take, by the way. I can take on g6, I can take on h6. I think you need this knight here. I think you need it protecting yourself. a5 doesn't really do a whole lot. Then it gives me a free move. I can take here, I can take here. You don't want to give me a freebie. I understand you're trying to play bishop a6, and I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but it's a little slow. You need something a bit faster. Bless you. The main threat, to give you guys an idea, is to take the h pawn. Because then I have h7 check as an idea, knight coming to g5. If you allow me to play hg, I'm going to have pretty nasty pawns. So your move should somehow combat taking on h6. It's a very tricky idea, though. Kh7 makes sense, but unfortunately, I'm not so sure you've prevented my ideas. So for example, I take here. The funny thing is, this king, you might end up regretting putting it here. You're kind of putting it in the line of fire. If you take on h6 with the bishop, I have this fork. If you take otherwise, I have this fork. I have this move. Too much, right? It's actually this move. But the key is to realize what the purpose is. At first, you're going, wait, how does this prevent takes on h6? But there's a very specific idea.
King h7?
King h7.
King H8.
You're just stepping the knife and coming to g5, right?
That's true. But that means you could have played king h7 takes bishop e7. I thought there was a problem with this move. Let me check. Oh, I'm starting to see where your problems might arise.
Oh, maybe like bishop coming to d3 or something?
Bishop coming to d3 is slightly scary.
So maybe king f7 or h8?
Yeah, but king f7, you're letting my h-pawn go, so that also has its drawbacks, right? Yeah, the move is g5.
Again.
So the key is you keep things blocked. See how this rook now is not doing anything? It's all about the pieces more than the pawns. It's the opposite of my last lecture. So knight takes g5, rook takes h6. You allow a discovery, which does nothing. And this, you have a safety is the key. This king can go to h8 if the knight moves with check. You kind of keep white at bay. And believe it or not, black still may be a little better here. But I would say that the position practically is still quite unclear. Not so easy to do. Yeah?
If you were, let's say like one of your students was playing this game and they were black, how much do you like if you're an amateur chess player, like how much do you hold yourself to be able to find such defenses?
This, I would say, I would not be even remotely angry if they don't find something like this. This is like, I would be very happy if I found this. This is very tricky. But my point is more like if you allow g5, like I would be very unhappy if they don't play g5. Because that's just a very simple concept. Don't make your life complicated. Don't do that. Even though this is a 2650 making this mistake, keep in mind, this is a guy who's like 100 points higher than me or whatever, right? He's better than me. But I would be very angry with myself if I didn't play g5. I would be angry with an 1800 student who didn't play g5. That's how big a mistake I think that was. Whereas now, I'd say you have to make the best of it, and these decisions are difficult. These ones, now, part of the reason why allowing g5 was so bad is because now you have to make tough choices. You saw how tough that line was, right? How many of you guys think you'd find bishop e7, g5? Honestly, I think my odds of finding it would be low. I'd say I'd give myself a fighting chance, 25, 30%. But it's still very difficult, right? For me? Oh, for you? Maybe. Don't doubt yourself too much. But the point is that it's really tough, right? But this is the whole point. If you don't keep your life simple, then even if your position is still good, you have to make really tough choices, and that's where people will mess up. That's where the pressure gets to you. Remember, you're playing the world champion. Right. Think of the pressure that includes, right? Even if you're not. Even if you're just playing some guy at the club who's 100 points higher than you, 200 points higher than you. You make that one little mistake, you give them the complicated position, you force yourself to make tough choices, that's where things go awry. Now let's take it from Carlsen's point of view, because that's what we're focusing on. If you're playing against someone who's up a piece on you, who has a winning position, keep the game messy. Keep it so that they have to worry about stuff, so that they have choices to make. The more choices you give them, the more likely it is they're going to make a wrong one, right? Down two rooks, I'd say that's probably too much, mostly. In any case, queen g1, though, is kind of a cool move, huh? In any case, black took this pawn, and now white just gets lots of play. But the question is what to do, because you can't really take on g5 now. h6 is possible. I might have bishop f8 then, though. Even if after h7 check king h8, I'm not sure your pawn's actually doing much. Good look at it. So I might play to I could play to h8, but then h7 check king g7 looks kind of ugly. So I'd rather try to play here. So you want to play h7? Yes, no, maybe so. Let's say you play h7, because it looks the most threatening, right? King h8.
I'll choose.
Yeah. Well, already trading queens is not something you want, right? Oh, look at this pawn structure. So beautiful. All right. Now what? So as long as I don't allow knight f7, I think black's doing quite well, no? Rook h6. I think you just lost. Keep in mind, this is a huge improvement to my position. It looks silly, but even when you're up a piece, if you have a nice pawn structure, it makes winning simpler. This is totally true. If you have a messed up pawn structure and half your pawns are weak or getting attacked, it's just hard to win, right? It's hard to keep things stable. When your pawn structure is super nice, your pieces all get out. Notice how all the squares are covered, right? You're not attacking me anymore. This pawn is not going anywhere. So that would be, I think, not the best. And I'm guessing, if anything, this was the idea that Jones missed. Jones probably thought he could take on g5 and white didn't have anything here. The problem is that once you take on g5, your king's already messed up, right? Your king side's already open. Damage is done. So sometimes it's kind of like a dive bomber. Once the damage is done, you backtrack. So what does he do? He needs to be able to take on g5, right, and start taking stuff. He doesn't want to trade queens. So what does he do? And this was an idea Alex had earlier. Yeah. Just go back. Damage done. Mission accomplished. The bomb was dropped. It did its damage. Now leave. And that's kind of what it is, because this, like, white just lost the pawn. But look at this king. Look at this king side. And already this position is massively difficult for black, I would say. So black played rook b8. And this was one decision I actually am not crazy about Carlsen's move. If I were him, I think knight takes g5, queen d3, and then maybe b3 next move is simpler. Keep your queen in the game, keep it kind of nice. Again, it's not easy, but this is maybe would be my choice. He ended up playing here instead. But I didn't like my queen so much now. So yeah, in this position, black should have taken. Again, it looks risky to just put your pawns out here, but once g5's happened, and again, this is why not playing g5 I was so harsh on. Once this happens, your king's already open. You can never close it, right? There's no way you can close the position over here, pawn structure-wise, can you? And this is kind of the key. If you can't close the king side, you kind of have to surrender to the fact, okay, it's going to get open, I just have to take stuff. So if takes here, knight takes, rook f6, I don't know. I think black's doing all right here. It's still not an easy position, but, you know, white still has tons of counterplay. But Jones actually justified this b3 move with his next move. He played queen to d8, trying to prevent knight takes g5 entirely. But this move is way too ambitious. So Carlsen has a very strong move now. I kind of misled you with all my anti-greed talk earlier. I think that was the problem.
Do you take a pawn?
Yeah. Why not? It's there. It's ripe. It's ready. But more importantly, the queen now here is kind of acting as a paralyzing agent, right? This rook can't move. This bishop can't move. The queen can attack directly. And remember, this queen was out of the game, right? So why not take a pawn? Leave black with this horrible mess. And already black's decisions are becoming very tough. But can you imagine Jones in this position? He won a piece against the world champion. He knew he was just up a piece. He didn't think that Magnus sacked it, right? So he allows one g5 move, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, here, the a7 pawn drops. So it's very important if you're in this situation as black. I would say not only have all of us blundered before, but all of us have and will not convert well when our opponent has blundered. Things will have gone against us. Things will become more complicated. And it's just as important in those positions to keep your calm, to not panic, to not do anything insane. Now here, it's already really tough for black. But I would say that if he had kept his calm instead of letting white take on a7, if he had taken on h5, played rook f6, kept the position together, maybe he would have drawn this game. Maybe he would have kind of recovered. Whereas now his life is very difficult. So I thought he should play rook e7 here at least. Keep things okay, threaten rook a8. And I actually thought that white had kind of a funny move here, which was to play a4. The idea being that if rook a8, queen moves, queen a5 no longer threatens anything. But okay, a4 is kind of a tricky move, maybe not the only one. The queen will probably drop back to our favorite g1 square again. Common motif, right? Kind of a funny move, but instead, white took here. So what is black? Black took on h5. So it's the same thing I suggested, it's just one move too late. So what does white do now? Why a4 now? There's no rook a8 threat. Nice try. Don't try to just steal my ideas. I ask you questions at specific moments. Yeah, why not? This pawn's not going anywhere, right? Takes rook g6. So how does he make progress now? Seems like black has you sort of at bay. Guarding the g-pawn. Knight c5 looks like a reasonable move. Certainly threatening, but unfortunately it has a very bad flaw to it. Actually, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry. Knight c3 is flawed as well. Yeah, I did the same thing. It's been a long day. Anyway, all right. Yeah, knight c5 actually looks like a reasonable move to me, trying to go after this bishop. He decided to take the pawn, though. Keep in mind, this guy still hangs, right? You see why queen takes a7 was such a nasty move? It wasn't just taking a pawn, it was paralyzing the queen side. Takes. Queen c8. So black's just hanging on for dear life. So show me you guys can go in for the kill now.
Rook e6.
So many tempting options. He goes for this one. Keeps it simple, right? Knight e6 is a huge threat now. This bishop is not going to be happy. Black plays rook a8. So why does he go to b6, by the way? Is he just being obnoxious, or does he have an idea? And maybe he is being obnoxious. Keep that in mind.
No, just takes on d5 and queen g6.
Takes on d5. Also, I think he wants takes d5, knight e6, or even knight e6 immediately, because this hangs now.
Okay.
So sometimes this isn't just a fancy move. It attacks more stuff, right? And the fact that the queen happens to be hanging turns out not to be relevant. So queen b6 is very accurate. I would say, actually, that in this game, after he blundered the piece, and this is what's most impressive about this game, after he blundered the piece, I think apart from that b3 move, every single move was most accurate. Every single move. So to give you an idea, that's what separates like the very top from not the very top. Imagine you make a horrible blunder of a piece, but then every single move the rest of the game is perfect. How many of us can say we could do that? Well, you guys are more confident than I am. But the point is about the mindset. He just resets. He's like, okay, I blundered a piece. I'm playing a new position now. All right, I'm lost, but I'm going to just keep playing. And it's important to have this kind of almost detached mindset where you're like, okay, I blundered a piece, new position. And black should have done the same and probably tried to do it, but didn't do it quite as well, where it's like, okay, I'm not winning anymore. I'm not just up a piece. Time to just play. And it's easy to get frustrated, be like, oh, I was so winning. Oh, I had this, I had that. But and I'm sure even Magnus might have been doing that. He was like, oh, I blundered a piece. I'm such an idiot. At the same time, didn't affect his play, did it? He just kept playing. He kept, trying to play accurate moves. And I'm actually very serious. Almost all these moves are completely accurate, which is very difficult to do. So he played rook a6. This is actually not a bad try. He's trying to at least complicate the game, force white to make tough choices, drive the queen off that annoying square. So does he take the rook?
No.
Why not?
The bishop is too strong.
That is the second reason why he doesn't.
I can take our queen.
There we go.
Mhm.
Whoops. So much for our easy win. And I don't know, I mean, he's a strong guy. I don't know if he could recover from 2 blunders like this in one game. I think at this point, Jones would be able to beat him. Keep in mind, this is a really strong player. This is a 2650. This is not a fish.
Although now he does get bishop b7, queen b7, 96 in, so
That's true.
joking, don't.
I'm going to look at it. What are you, crazy? No, but you're still down a piece. Unfortunate. Anyway, queen c5. I thought he should maybe try queen f8. Just to try to simplify the game. The problem is that after takes... Oops. Yeah, takes was not as accurate. I remember this now. Because if takes, the problem you have is that after bishop takes, you can't win material directly. You have a nice discovery, but you're not discovering anything worthwhile. Although this still looks pretty strong. Maybe you could win this bishop, but then you might get trapped. Sorry, I'm just to show you what I'm looking at. A little bit far afield, but the idea is that this happens, but your knight is kind of embarrassed. So I don't know, not so easy. But white has a very, very nice continuation here.
96.
What's the idea if queen takes queen?
Something.
Possibly. Maybe it's nothing. You didn't consider this. So 96 is indeed very strong, but what's the idea?
Oh.
Well, there are only 2 moves that are worth looking at here,
Rook takes g7. Oh yeah, rook takes g7, knight takes e.
and the rook hangs. So black probably has to take, white takes. I would say, believe it or not, there's far less of a chance of screwing up 2 pawns here than there is of screwing up a piece. And the reason is that the position is so simplified, right? But maybe black should have at least tried this. I don't know. Black instead played here and decided to get slaughtered instead. Although, to be fair to him, it was a very difficult choice. So okay, continue. Show me you guys can do this. Good move. Threatening knight f6, that would be very nasty. So he plays king h8. Very nice. So again, a lot of it's just, you bring your pieces into the attack and the position plays itself. Keep in mind, it's not just that the position objectively is bad. It's so tough to play. Your king's open, white's is completely safe. This rook's always hanging. You're threatening queen h4, knight f6, so the rook can't even move. And it's just so difficult to actually just play. So he plays queen e7. I actually just like queen g3, and I feel like you're just going to crash through. It's pretty bad. But he decides to get kind of technical now. He just is like, all right, I'll take the rook. I'll be down a little bit less material. Sometimes people do this just to make life easy. But I don't know. There are times when you don't want to take that rook. You want to just keep pressing. You want to keep attacking. But this is good enough. He plays queen h2. And now? So he's putting pressure here, but he also is attacking what? So yeah, probably black should try this, but after takes, black can at least play on here. But again, I would say that even though objectively, it's lost, but maybe you can play, like from a human standpoint, it's so easy to blunder here if you're black. Just because all your pieces are loose, everything hangs, it's just very difficult. In the game, he played here. Queen e6 check. Rook g5, threatening rook f5. Knight e3. Queen d6. Knight c5. And finished the game off how? in mind, you don't have to mate. You just have to make your opponent resign. Yeah? Look for loose pieces. What's loose here? This guy's loose, this guy's loose, this guy's loose, this guy's loose, this guy's loose. So all the pieces are loose, but I like to be helpful. But seriously, what are your tempo moves? What's loose? Tempo moves should take care of this one. Hmm? Simple, simple. Don't be fancy. What's hanging?
993.
Fork. Right? King moves, takes here. You're up 3 pawns with 0 counterplay and you still have an attack. Any GM is going to resign here. This is not one of those positions where you play it out hoping they blunder. There's no way to not win as white here. In any case, so you saw how it happened, right? Like he just blundered a piece outright, but kept in there, kept his play. So I guess the key things to remember are you have to reset. Once you blunder, you have to realize you blunder, reset, take a whole new view of the position. The next step is be accurate. You saw how he played completely precisely after he blundered. Not an easy thing to do for anyone, but the key is be accurate. If you play a couple inaccurate moves, it often is the difference between being a piece down but being able to fight or being a piece down and having no play. That you're just going to lose. And be aware when the game switches around, when you're starting to play for the initiative, when you're playing for the advantage again. Keep those chances. And again, if you're up the piece, make sure you keep things simple. That G5 move was what stood out to me. If you play G5, the likelihood of Magnus coming back, very low, in my opinion. But yeah, even the pros, even the very best, blunder pieces sometimes. So do not get discouraged if you do so. And hopefully this will encourage you not to give up in those games, to keep fighting.